Russia is one of the largest countries in the world, and it's now become one of the most important countries when it comes to Bitcoin. Why is that? Russia's central bank has been attacking Bitcoin by saying that they are proposing a ban. They want nobody trading Bitcoin. They want nobody trading cryptocurrency. They want nobody mining Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies either. The central bank is taking an abrasive view of these digital assets. But the finance ministry and now Russian President Vladimir Putin are actually saying, wait a second, we shouldn't ban this, we should simply regulate it. Here's why that's important. Ultimately, Russia is wanting to get involved in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. President Putin has said that Russia has some advantages in Bitcoin mining. Specifically, he has been talking about the idea that there are areas where there's a surplus in energy. Here's the direct quote. He said, "We also have certain competitive advantages here, especially in the so-called mining. I mean the surplus of electricity and well-trained personnel available in this country." Now, the surplus of electricity is in a number of regions in Russia. It usually comes from their hydroelectric plants that they have. And also, they have Soviet-era industrial facilities that have been shut down but are still wired to actually create tons and tons of electricity. There's racks of mining devices, like you can see here in Norilsk, Russia. I didn't say that right, but you get the point. And ultimately, what you can see is that Russia, one of the largest countries in the world, if they begin to actually embrace this, if they say we're going to create a regulatory framework, we're going to allow people to buy and sell Bitcoin, we're going to actually encourage mining. Maybe the state even gets into actually mining Bitcoin. If Russia was to buy Bitcoin and put it on its balance sheet, that would be a shot heard around the world. Bitcoin's price would absolutely skyrocket if Russia started to embrace Bitcoin. There are also things that are a little bit more complex that they could do. They could actually start to price oil or gas in Bitcoin rather than in dollars or other currencies. I don't know if that's necessarily the best geopolitical move because it would be an abrasive attack right against the US dollar and the United States. And so ultimately what we are watching is a global game theory play out here. This geopolitical competition where China has gone ahead and actually kicked out all of the people who are mining Bitcoin. They've gone after everyone who's trying to buy and sell Bitcoin. They've also kicked out a lot of the companies that are trying to support the assets as well. And then we see a place like El Salvador. El Salvador is obviously embracing it. They're plugging their country right into the Bitcoin network. They bought Bitcoin. They built software products for Bitcoin. They've built ATM networks for Bitcoin. And they've even gone ahead and said that they're going to create Bitcoin City and they are going to launch Bitcoin-backed bonds. All of that is because El Salvador has now leapt onto the center of the global stage using Bitcoin as a way to encourage people to understand they see the future, they want to be innovative, and they want to be at the forefront. The United States, we're somewhere in between. We have some politicians and a number of companies that are saying, look, this is good for business. Bitcoin is American technology. It stands for everything we stand for, and we should embrace this and we should drive it forward. It can be a signal and a driver of economic prosperity moving forward. But ultimately, there are still many politicians and lots of people, both commentators and entrepreneurs, who don't see the value, who think that it's stupid, who completely want the industry to go away. And so we're not necessarily net bullish as a country. We're also not net negative as a country either. We have been the biggest beneficiary of China's decision to kick all those miners out. More than 10% of the global hash rate now resides in Texas, and about 30% globally resides within the United States borders. And so ultimately, the United States has become one of the world's largest miners. But ultimately, Russia has a decision to make. Do they follow the central bank plan and actually ban this stuff, both from trading and a mining perspective? Or will Vladimir Putin and the finance ministry end up going ahead and creating that regulatory framework and say, we're going to get into the game? If Russia gets in the game, it will kick off that global game theory, and there will be more countries that continue to follow. El Salvador was the first domino. Will Russia be the second? Nobody knows yet, but if we see them go hard into this space, I think it'll beg a lot of questions, both from an international kind of politics standpoint and also that game theory playing out. What happens to financial markets? What happens to other asset classes? And what does this mean for the world? The ball is now in Russia's court, and we're all paying attention, waiting to see what they're going to do. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I think Putin runs Russia. Central bank said, we want to ban this. I think it's not going to be banned. I think it's going to be regulated in the sense that he wants. He's also creating that public narrative. And basically, you don't know what he's saying behind closed doors. Russia is the third largest miner in the world for Bitcoin. So that's a very, very big deal if they decide to go ahead and ban that, or they go ahead and put the pedal to the metal in the sense and regulate it and get involved in the mining themselves with all the plants that they have and the access to the surplus of the electricity. But yeah, that's a big deal. And also, look, if they start pricing oil in Bitcoin, that's going to be an insane thing for Bitcoin. That's going to rapidly increase the price of Bitcoin. And it's very well possible, right? If they decided to invade Ukraine The U.S. backs with sanctions. They back Ukraine and impose sanctions on Russia. Russia can go ahead and remove the dollar as their reserve currency and go ahead and implement Bitcoin as what oil is being priced in, right? And that would be a very, very big move. I don't expect that to happen, but it's definitely a possibility and on the table.
Joe?
Yeah, I think people have been predicting kind of some theory of this for a long period of time, right, with the kind of a global hash war. And if Russia was to get involved in that, they're already the third largest, but if they really started to put government resources behind it and really go all in on this, they could quickly kind of capture a lot of this market. And as you said, the U.S. has been a big beneficiary of the China ban, but ultimately, like, we haven't been pro-regulation on all this stuff, right? The government hasn't really put all their resources and their power behind it. So I think if Russia was to do that, and you saw a couple other big countries do something similar, the U.S. would have no choice but to do something similar also, right? Like, you don't want to fall behind where it's much more difficult to get 5%, 10%, 20%, 50% and lose that lead that you currently have. So I think the U.S. will respond if Russia does something like this. And ultimately, like, that's the kind of stuff that's going to drive the price up, right? If you get this war between different countries kind of competing on the security of network, all it does is make it all stronger. And it becomes a much more institutional grade asset. It becomes much more secure. More people are demanding this asset, and ultimately the price will rise because of the constrained and fixed supply.
John, when you think about this, you said that Putin runs Russia, right? He kind of has an iron fist that he's able to rule with, and I agree with that. When you think about kind of Bitcoin playing into this, do you think at all about like this Ukraine-Russia thing that everyone's talking about? Do you think Bitcoin plays at all, or are those two different topics that won't necessarily overlap?
I think it's a tool that can be used, especially if they want to, against the United States in the sense of their oil and everything that goes along with that. But I don't think that it will be. I think it's on the table, and you really don't know. Like, we don't even know what Russia's plan is, why they're putting a bunch of troops near the border, all of that. But it's a possibility. It's on the table. I think hopefully it doesn't. But if they do, I think that will basically create a financial war between the United States and Russia, that they're going to be competing for Bitcoin if Russia decides to go fully into it. The U.S. is either going to be lagging behind and not get involved at all, ban it in the United States, which I also don't think is a real possibility, but could happen. Or they go ahead and they say, all right, let's compete for mining. Let's see who can get more electricity and more people involved in the cryptocurrency space in their country. And I think the United States would win in that situation.
If you had to look 10 years out, who do you think would own most of this, the hash rate globally?
U.S.
U.S., you think?
Yeah. I don't think that it's actually a good thing for the United States to have more than 50% of the hash rate either, right?
Yeah.
Just like it's not good for
you want
China.
it to be distributed.
Yeah, you want it to
obviously.
be as decentralized and distributed as possible. But I think that on a per country basis, the United States will have the most, right?
Yeah.
It's the
Well,
most
that doesn't even
regulated.
have to be 50%, right? It could be if
They have 30%,
Yeah.
right, and the rest is spread globally, and nobody has more than, let's say, 33%. I think that if I had to pick one country that's going to have 33%, then it'd be the United States. Yeah. One is they already have a big leap. Two is lots of oil and gas, in places like Texas, et cetera. The third is a lot of people forget how important the regulatory climate is. So the ability to know what the rules are, to clearly have kind of transparency around that, and then also to have the predictability that they're not going to change every time somebody wakes up and says, I want this, I want this, I want this. And so you can't build a business in those environments, right? You have to do it in a kind of clearly.
But do you think the
clear
U.S. is that
regulation.
place right now?
I think the United
There's
States
enough regulation?
I think the United States is the most clear cut when it comes to mining, in terms of the rules that are in place today are likely to be the rules that are in place a decade from now. Although the United States has plenty of challenges, right? And we've talked about them ad nauseum on this show. I think that it has the least amount of corruption. It also has the least amount of non-democratic process, meaning that you can't just, have the politicians come in and say, you can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, wait, hold on a second. There's voting, right? There's obviously
in
checks
China,
and
it happened
balances.
overnight, right? Like literally, they said,
And it
pack
was
up your
one
stuff and leave.
region,
Yeah.
and they basically, crushed the whole thing. So, like, there are some similarities to other places in the world, right? I'm not saying that the United States is perfect, but what I'm saying is that if you're going to go build a business, it's true in every industry, right? What is the place that has the greatest regulatory kind of clarity, right? In all these different places, it's in the United States, right? And it's not like is it a security? Is it not a security, right? Which a lot of people in crypto talk about. I'm talking about the fact of, like, what the taxation is. You're not worried about somebody from the government showing up and being like, we want all the Bitcoin, right? Give us your miners, right? You don't have to worry about that stuff in the United States. And so I think that ultimately ends up being, if there's anywhere in the world, there's the safety and kind of stuff here.